America and China, two nations that quietly shape almost every corner of modern life, not through armies marching or missiles flying, but through money, technology, and control over the systems that keep the world running. When you buy a phone, apply for a job, check your savings, or even scroll online, you are touching a world built largely by these two powers. Yet this rivalry did not begin as a battle. It began as two completely different journeys that eventually collided. To understand how this happened, we have to return to a moment when the world was broken. After World War II, entire continents were exhausted. Europe lay in ruins. Asia struggled to rebuild. Governments were sown, drowning in debt, and millions were desperate for stability. In the middle of this chaos, one nation emerged stronger than anyone expected: the United States. America's cities were intact. Its factories were running, and its economy was ready to expand. At a time when the world needed structure and confidence, America stepped forward. In 1944, a decision was made that most people today never think about but feel every day. The U.S. dollar became the foundation of the global financial system. This meant oil would be priced in dollars, international trade would be settled in dollars, and global reserves would be stored in dollars. The world did not just accept this system, it relied on it. America became more than a country. It became the center of global finance, the banker of nations, and the rule-maker of economic order. China's path during this period was the complete opposite. In 1949, after the Communist Revolution, China turned inward. Private enterprise disappeared, foreign businesses were removed, the state controlled production, pricing, and labor. For decades, China remained isolated from the global economy. It was poor, underdeveloped, and largely invisible on the world stage. While America was building corporations, highways, and global influence, China was focused on survival. Then came a turning point in the late 1972. A leader named Deng Xiaoping made a decision that would redefine history. China would open its economy, but not surrender control. Capitalism would exist, but under strict government guidance. This was not freedom, it was strategy. Special economic zones were created. Foreign companies were invited in. Manufacturing was prioritized above all else. What followed was one of the largest economic shifts humanity has ever seen. Western corporations saw an opportunity they could not ignore. China offered extremely cheap labor, massive scale, and unmatched speed, profit. Margins exploded. Factories that once stood in America and Europe slowly moved east. Entire supply chains followed. Manufacturing towns in the West declined, while industrial cities in China rose almost overnight. At first, this relationship appeared perfect. American companies became richer. Consumers enjoyed cheaper products. China gained jobs, skills, and access to advanced technology. Global trade expanded rapidly. The world felt more connected than ever before. But beneath this success, a dangerous imbalance was forming. America slowly lost its ability to produce. Factories closed, skilled labor disappeared, middle-class wages stagnated. China, on the other hand, was not just assembling products. It was learning how the global system truly worked. Supply chains, logistics, finance, trade agreements, and technological standards were being absorbed and mastered. By the time the world entered the 21st century, China was no longer satisfied being the world's factory. It wanted independence. It wanted influence. It wanted power. The government poured massive resources into education, research, artificial intelligence, telecommunications, advanced manufacturing, and space technology. Companies that once copied Western designs began creating their own. China moved from imitation to competition. This was the moment America began to feel uneasy. The partner it had helped grow was no longer dependent. It was becoming capable. And capability leads to ambition. Today, the United States still holds enormous power through the dollar, global institutions, and military reach. China holds power through manufacturing dominance, supply chain control, and rapid technological advancement. This rivalry now shapes trade wars, technology bans, chip shortages, and geopolitical tension across the globe. And this conflict is not distant. It affects the prices you pay, the security of your job, and the stability of the global economy. This is not a story of heroes and villains. It is the story of power shifting quietly in real time. And this story has only just begun. As the 21st century unfolded, the competition between America and China intensified. It was no longer just about factories or trade. It became a race for technological dominance, global influence, and economic control. Modern power is measured not only in military might but in semiconductors, artificial intelligence, digital infrastructure, and control over the global financial system. China understood this early and invested heavily, creating strategies that targeted every critical sector. By focusing on education, research, and technological innovation, it laid the foundation for a new era of influence that could rival the United States. During the early 2000s, China quietly built the infrastructure necessary for long-term dominance. Universities produced thousands of engineers and computer scientists each year. Factories became research hubs where knowledge, not just products, was created. Companies like Huawei, Tencent, and Alibaba began developing technologies that would later challenge global leaders. Semiconductors, the tiny chips powering devices from smartphones to military equipment, became a central focus. China invested heavily in domestic production to reduce dependency on foreign suppliers, ensuring that it could not be easily pressured by international policies or trade sanctions. Meanwhile, America, though still a technological leader, faced significant challenges. Outsourcing manufacturing to China had reduced domestic control over supply chains. Intellectual property, once safeguarded, was increasingly transferred, whether intentionally or through industrial partnerships. American corporations were reaping short-term profits, but at the cost of long-term strategic advantage. Over time, the U.S. began to recognize that its economic reliance on China was creating vulnerabilities that could not be ignored. By the 2010, China's ambitions became clearer. Its Made in China 2025 initiative aimed to dominate advanced industries such as robotics, high-speed rail, aerospace, renewable energy, and artificial intelligence. While many Western countries debated how to approach these challenges, China implemented a coordinated, state-backed strategy, unimpeded by electoral cycles or market hesitations. The result was rapid development, with new technologies being deployed faster than most expected. Artificial intelligence became a crucial battleground. China invested billions into AI research, creating ecosystems capable of competing with Silicon Valley. AI is more than consumer products. It underpins automation, logistics, cybersecurity, predictive analytics, and even national defense. Whoever leads in AI has the ability to shape economies, influence global markets, and determine technological standards worldwide. Recognizing this, China accelerated its development, aiming to control the future of the global digital economy. Trade and supply chains became a key form of leverage. With its role as the manufacturing hub of the world, China held unprecedented influence over global production. Companies worldwide depended on Chinese factories, giving Beijing the power to affect international commerce through policy or economic shifts. In response, the U.S. implemented tariffs, technology restrictions, and diplomatic pressure to counterbalance China's growing control. These measures, however, often had unintended consequences, impacting not just China, but global markets, businesses, and consumers. Beyond economics, China expanded its soft power and global reach through infrastructure initiatives like the Belt and Road. Investments in Asia, Africa, and Europe strengthened diplomatic ties and economic dependencies, creating networks that extended its influence. America relied on traditional military alliances, while China leveraged strategic investment, technology, and trade partnerships to secure long-term advantages. Energy and innovation further deepened the competition. China became a leader in solar technology, battery production, and renewable energy solutions. America, despite advanced research and corporate innovation, often struggled with political gridlock and competing priorities. Whoever dominates energy technology will shape global economics, sustainability, and security for decades to come. Even education became a strategic battlefield. China trained hundreds of thousands of engineers, scientists, and researchers annually, while American institutions faced challenges in accessibility, affordability, and alignment with modern technological demands. Talent pipelines became a critical factor in determining which country could sustain innovation over the long term. Cybersecurity emerged as another front. China's investment in secure networks, advanced 5G technology, and AI-enabled surveillance positioned it as a formidable player in cyber influence and defense. America responded with countermeasures, alliances, and regulations. But the digital landscape remained a fluid and contest space. The battle now exists in algorithms, infrastructure, and information control rather than physical borders. This modern rivalry is silent but pervasive. Every smartphone, AI system, trade agreement, and semiconductor is a piece of the strategic puzzle. The choices nations make in research, policy, and investment affect global markets, individual livelihoods, and the trajectory of innovation. The competition is continuous, complex, and high stakes. It is no longer a war between countries in traditional terms, but a global contest for technological leadership, economic influence, and the ability to shape the rules of the 21st century. As these two superpowers continue their race, every decision in Beijing or Washington reverberates worldwide. Companies, governments, and individuals are impacted by a struggle that most cannot see but feel daily. It is a contest not of immediate victories but of vision, patience, and strategic foresight. Those who prepare wisely, invest intelligently, and innovate effectively will set the pace for the next era of global power. This battle is ongoing, and the world is watching. As the rivalry deepened, the battlefield expanded beyond technology and trade into something far more powerful: influence over the global system itself. At the center of this system lies money, standards, and control over how nations interact economically. While America has long relied on the dominance of the U.S. dollar, China began quietly preparing alternatives that could reduce its vulnerability and increase its leverage. For decades, the U.S. dollar has acted as the backbone of global trade. Oil, commodities, international loans, and reserves are largely priced in dollars. This gives the United States extraordinary power. Sanctions can isolate countries. Financial access can be granted or denied. Global markets respond instantly to decisions made by the Federal Reserve. But this power also creates fear among rival nations, and China understood that true independence required reducing reliance on the dollar-based system. China began promoting the international use of its own currency, the yuan. Trade agreements with partner nations increasingly allowed transactions in local currencies instead of dollars. Currency swap agreements were signed with dozens of countries, quietly building a parallel system beneath the surface. While the yuan did not replace the dollar, it slowly reduced China's exposure to financial pressure. This was not about speed, it was about stability and long-term positioning. At the same time, China invested heavily in digital finance. The development of a digital yuan marked a turning point. Unlike cryptocurrencies, this was a state-backed digital currency designed for efficiency, traceability, and cross-border use. If adopted widely, it could allow international transactions without touching the traditional Western banking system. This idea alone sent shockwaves through global financial institutions because it challenged decades of financial dominance. Infrastructure played a crucial role in this strategy. Through ports, railways, energy grids, and data cables built across multiple continents, China embedded itself into the physical and digital backbone of global trade. Economic dependence followed naturally. Countries that relied on Chinese-built infrastructure often relied on Chinese financing, technology, and standards as well. Influence was no longer enforced, it was integrated. Meanwhile, America focused on defending its existing system. The strength of the dollar remained unmatched, supported by deep financial markets, global trust, and military power. But maintaining dominance required constant adaptation. Rising debt, political division, and economic inequality at home created pressure on the system. While America still led globally, the margin of control was slowly narrowing. Standards became another hidden battlefield. Whoever sets global standards for technology, communications, and finance shapes the future. China pushed aggressively to influence international regulatory bodies, ensuring that its technologies and protocols became accepted norms. From 5G networks to payment systems, standard setting became a form of silent power that determined who controlled compatibility and access. Soft power also evolved. Media, culture, education, and digital platforms became tools of influence. China expanded international media presence and educational exchanges, while America relied on long-established cultural dominance. The competition here was subtle but impactful. Narratives shape perception, and perception shapes alliances. Even global crises revealed the depth of this rivalry. Supply chain disruptions, financial instability, and geopolitical conflicts highlighted how interconnected the world had become. Nations realized that dependency carried risks. Both America and China used these moments to reinforce alliances, secure resources, and adjust strategies for resilience rather than pure efficiency. This phase of the rivalry was no longer about overt confrontation. It was about system building versus system defense. One side aimed to reshape the global order gradually, while the other worked to preserve an existing structure that had benefited it for generations. The tension remained mostly invisible to ordinary people, yet it influenced prices, jobs, technology access, and national decisions worldwide. The question was no longer who was stronger today, but who was building a system that could last tomorrow. Economic power, financial architecture, and global trust were now the true measures of dominance. And in this silent struggle, every investment, policy, and alliance mattered more than any single victory. As this silent rivalry moves toward the future, one truth becomes increasingly clear. The outcome will not be decided by a single war, a single crisis, or a single leader. It will be shaped by patience, adaptability, and the ability to inspire trust in a rapidly changing world. Power today is no longer just about how much you control, but how many people choose to rely on your system willingly. The United States still holds enormous advantages. The dollar remains deeply embedded in global finance. American universities, innovation hubs, and capital markets continue to attract talent from across the world. Silicon Valley still drives technological breakthroughs that shape everyday life. Most importantly, many nations trust the existing system not because it is perfect, but because it is familiar and relatively predictable. Trust, once earned, becomes incredibly difficult to replace. China, however, is playing a different game. It is not trying to overthrow the current order overnight. Instead, it is offering alternatives. Different supply chains, different financial channels, different development models. For countries that feel left out or constrained by the existing system, these alternatives appear attractive. China presents itself as a partner focused on infrastructure, growth, and long-term planning rather than political conditions. Whether this promise always holds true is debated, but its appeal is undeniable. Technology will likely be the most decisive factor moving forward. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, and energy storage will define economic and military power in the coming decades. Whoever leads in these fields will not just dominate markets, but shape how societies function. America currently leads in innovation, but China's scale, data access, and state-driven focus allow it to move with remarkable speed. This race is not about who invents first, but who deploys fastest and most effectively. Another critical factor is resilience. Global systems are becoming more fragile. Pandemics, climate change, cyber attacks, and supply disruptions have shown how quickly stability can break down. Nations are now prioritizing redundancy over efficiency. Both America and China are reshaping their strategies to reduce vulnerabilities, secure resources, and protect domestic industries. The future belongs to systems that can absorb shocks without collapsing. Public perception will also shape the outcome. Power depends on legitimacy. If people around the world believe a system offers opportunity, fairness, and security, they will support it. If they see inequality, exploitation, or instability, trust erodes. America faces internal challenges that affect its global image, while China faces skepticism over transparency and control. Winning the future requires not just strength, but credibility. Importantly, this rivalry does not mean the world must choose only one side. Many countries are learning to navigate between both powers, benefiting from each while committing fully to neither. This multipolar reality complicates the idea of dominance. Influence becomes shared, negotiated, and constantly shifting. Control is no longer absolute. What makes this moment unique is that history is unfolding quietly. There are no dramatic declarations, no clear turning points that announce a winner. Instead, decisions are being made in boardrooms, research labs, financial institutions, and policy meetings. The consequences of these choices may only become visible years later. For ordinary people, this rivalry shapes everyday life in subtle ways. The price of goods, the availability of technology, the stability of jobs, and the flow of information are all influenced by this competition. Even when unnoticed, it affects the direction of the world we live in. In the end, the question is not whether America will fall or China will rise. The real question is what kind of global system will emerge from this rivalry. Will it be open or fragmented, cooperative or divided, stable or volatile? The answer depends on choices being made right now, often far from public view. History shows that no power lasts forever, but it also shows that transitions are rarely sudden. They are gradual, complex, and shaped by countless small decisions. The world is not watching a collapse or a conquest. It is watching a transformation. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: the future will not belong to the strongest, but to the system that people trust enough to build their lives within. That is the true battleground of the modern world, and the struggle for it has already begun.